Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Matter of Trust. And this is not just a random episode. Today, we're making the 10th episode. Also, it's Patrick's birthday. And congratulations, Patrick, with your birthday.
Thank you very much.
We had a short conversation before where you told me like you're 40, and I literally thought you were 30 or something like that. So I'm kind of I'm excited by that. I'm in a good mood. It's awesome. You have made some preparations for today. You just told me, and you have Googled the definitions of today's topic. And today's topic is spirituality. And it's kind of a broad topic, so it's probably good that you Googled the very definition of what is spirituality. So can you please enlighten us on what Google says that is the definition of spirituality?
Yes. I'm gonna read two short ones. I bet there are more, but that's some idea. So the one goes like this. Spirituality means knowing that our lives have significance in a context beyond a mundane everyday existence at the level of biological needs that drives selfishness and aggression. It means knowing that we are a significant part of a purposeful unfolding of life in our universe. So that is one. The other says this. The quality that involves deep feelings and beliefs of a religious nature rather than the physical parts of life. So these are two examples of definitions.
Those are two very good examples. I think like the first one was like, that's beautiful, while the second one, it seems like a little bit of an understatement.
But I bet that it means like some people will really mirror themselves or resonate with also the second, probably. And to me,
right.
I also have opinions on both of these, of course. But
yeah, let's hear those. What do you think?
Well, yeah, the first I agree with you about it's a beautiful description, and I think it's trying to embrace spirituality as a very broad thing and trying to paint it big and deep, yeah, without limiting it too much and leaving room for a lot in it. And it's touching upon the biological versus purpose unfolding in life. So that's very beautiful, and I resonate with that myself. The second, I think it's good to have it here because sometimes it's also that simple. The word religion or religious nature for a long time intimidated me a lot, but now it's not that much anymore. And when I hear religious nature, I can almost hear it as, spiritual nature or some other thing that is embracing more than the biological and physical parts. But I think some people it's good because if it's easy for you to say, oh, my religion is this and that, I'm religious, then it can resonate.
If you had to define the definition of spirituality yourself, what would that definition be?
Well, yeah, I thought about that, and there's one specific episode that comes to my mind as a help for me to describe it, and it's on one of my travels. I was in the south of Turkey, I think, and at some camp, and I was talking to a woman about life, and as I was describing how I experienced life, and I think I was talking about the beauty of life and why it was beautiful and why it was always beautiful, and I was describing details in the leaves and maybe because I was trying to give her an example of how I believe we can enter different states without drugs. And I was trying to I was describing what life can be experienced like if you're open to it and curious enough and slow enough. Um, and then she said, "Wow, you sound so spiritual." Uh, and then that had me thinking. I'd been thinking before that, but I was like, at first, it was a mix. Like it felt like a compliment because she was such a nice person and she said it in such a nice way. It was a compliment. Like I could hear that. And at the same time, I was triggered. Like, are you calling me spiritual? Like, why are you calling me spiritual? I'm just a person. I'm not out there, you know. And that's when I started to bridge spirituality with something not that mysterious necessarily, not not something that is you know, not judging it as I maybe used to do, like thinking that's something people go into when they don't like reality, and then they escape into what they call spirituality. You know, maybe I judged it like that. And then I looked in, then I started thinking and saying, okay, so what is the bridge? Why is he saying that? And that brought me to think of paying attention to purpose, to the now, to the details and the miracles in all the small things. And when that happens, when I do that, some people will also think maybe I'm a little weird, like, how can you see beauty here? It's an irritating situation. And then I'm like, okay, so spirituality is when you go, yeah, beyond. Actually, what the first definition is saying of it, beyond the mundane everyday existence with the selfishness and aggression. And you look at purpose, you look at the beauty that unfolds, you look at that, you find that, you connect to something bigger. Call it whatever you want. So that's my thoughts and my experience in defining spirituality. It's a lot of awareness again. This word pops up a lot in our podcast. How about you?
Spirituality for me, in short terms, is having a sense and understanding of self. Simply that. It's nothing more, nothing less. Doesn't have to be. That's essentially how I look at it. Once you understand self, you kind of cannot be unaware of spirit or spirituality. It's just something that's there, like a fundamental reality kind of thing. The way I've experienced it in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I know it seems very different for many people, and of course we all have different perspectives. So it's beautiful like that.
It's nice and simple. I like that we
Yeah,
get
nice
so
and simple.
these different. Yeah, it's good with this difference because we need to. It's good. People can resonate with whatever they need to resonate with, and we need to have room for these differences. And I like it. I like it. I can also
Yeah.
think it makes so much sense. It's just nice and short. Yeah.
Yeah, also like there's a tendency of making spirituality such a complex topic to talk about, and it's really not. Like it's of course you can look at it like it's full with complexities, and you will see the many complexities, but you will never get to really nail them down by the complexities alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Einstein said something similar, where he said like you really understand something when you can describe it in simple terms. It's the same thing with spirituality. If you really have like a very simplistic way of looking at things, life is so much more simplistic. Like you never see Buddha talk about anything complex. He always gives stories that you can relate to because it's simplistic.
It's and yeah, stories. You can see when I had to describe it, I actually started with a specific story because it was how to grasp it. And so it makes
Right.
so much sense. I can really see why people in old scriptures are using stories with and these metaphors, pictures to get the hang of this.
Even today, I
Yeah.
was thinking about this very thing because I realized that, in all the podcasts, I actually given the story. And in this podcast, I also prepared a story. So, it's yeah, it's interesting how stories work to really make something for yourself to see.
Yeah.
Because you can give an answer, but that is your personal answer. It doesn't necessarily resonate with others, but stories do. Stories people can interpret however they want, and it always essentially means the same in the end.
Especially if a story is not with specific people, where you don't do much about describing the characters in the story, and that means so many people can relate. Because if you describe a character, or like you and I are characters, and if people don't feel like, oh, I'm like Patrick, or I'm like Joshua, then it's hard to relate, maybe, or harder. So if you have a story and you have focus on what's going on in the story, and not so much on a careful description, a detailed description of a character, then yeah, it can just free to fill in the gaps and make it fit your life. It's beautiful. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Looking forward to the one you said you brought.
Oh yeah. I
If,
think actually we can slowly walk towards it.
is it? Are we passing? Are we passing through what is it not? Or you want to give the story while we're at what spirituality means, or is?
Well, we can take the question where it is in the story is in, because okay, well we actually have to go through what spirituality is definitely not to do that, because it's under another question, so it has to do with that. So what is spirituality not, Patrick? What do you think when I ask you this question?
Well, I think that spirituality is not something you can check off. Like, say, I sat down in silence and therefore I meditated and therefore I'm spiritual. Check, done. I think that can be, there are things you can do, and then you can feel like, now I'm spiritual. You can also go to some group, and the name of the group is spiritual something, but it does not mean that it's more spiritual, or that you're more in touch with spirit. With yeah, it's so there's these things we can label it spirit or spirituality, but if we don't, if the intention is not to get to know oneself or to understand purpose or these deeper things, if the intention is still just to, oh, I want to be able to say I'm spiritual, just to satisfy the ego, then I would say it's probably not spirituality.
Touche. I think exactly the same. The question that I'm referring to is also the next question, which is spiritual ego. What is a spiritual ego? And the way I understand it, what spirituality is not is being overly religious about it. Like you just said, like I do this, so now I'm kind of spiritual, and I do all of these things, so I'm spiritual. One of the worst examples I ever heard from, and this is a real life experience. Someone wrote to me. She's a vegan mentor or something like that, vegan coach. And we were writing back and forth, and I told her about my spiritual approach to life and such. And she asked me all of a sudden, now I just have to ask you, how can you be spiritual when you're not vegan? And I was like, what the F? What the No, it was so absurd, because I had to go into dialogue with her, like, what do you mean? Because I eat animals, I cannot be spiritual, or what? I mean, what about tigers? They're like spiritual beings, but still, like, they must eat other animals to survive. Are they not spiritual? Are they not alive? I mean, what the? It's just, yeah. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, I've heard these in like funny scenarios and such, but never imagined I would actually experience that in my life. I did though, I did, and it was special. But what happens there, which is the point, is that that's the spiritual ego. You're creating this egoic construct, which essentially takes over all the definitions of spirituality, which essentially closes you to other perspectives of what that actually means for other people. That's ego. So yeah, and when you connect with ego and that kind of controls the show, then you kind of lose a sense of yourself, because you are not your ego. You have an ego, sure, but you're not your ego. So it's kind of, to go back to the question, what is it not? It's kind of approaching a subject with intellect rather than spirit. Of course, there's a balance to it. There's there's a transformation from knowledge to wisdom, for example. Knowledge, the way I understand it, is like intellectual stuff, like informations and such that you gather about certain subjects and topics. And wisdom is the integration of that, where you actually start to practically use that with that knowledge in your backland. So yeah.
At least one path to wisdom, because there's probably other paths to wisdom, but yeah.
Sure. It's the way I've come to understand wisdom, because knowledge and wisdom can seem like very much the same. There's a certain amount of holiness to the wisdom part. And one of the things that really clicked for me was this little quote that the ultimate form of prayer you can do is action. Because you can have so much knowledge, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have any use. You cannot really have that feeling of owning that, and owning that is wisdom. Yeah, the way I see it, the way I've come to know it and explore it in my situation, my experience. So yeah, let's talk about the spiritual ego, because now we touched it. I mean, we cannot, we must shut it down, man.
I think you gave a really good example. It's like, it kind of doesn't go hand in hand, as I see it, to limit the understanding of spirituality based on of our own ideas. Like, it seems too specific to say that you need to do exactly this to be spiritual. It's like a totally I don't know, there's something clashing, there's something they don't match, because spirituality, if it's something bigger, if it's something not physical, then how can it be held up against a physical measure? It's
completely missing the point.
Yeah, I would.
So, for example, you can think about like one source, for example. We all come from one source, seemingly so. And if there was only one way to salvation, or one way to do things right, wouldn't we all just do that? I mean, that would make sense, right? But it's not like that. There's like billions of ways to do so. Billions. For every person, there's a certain way to salvation, which is one of the goals we have as humankind, salvation for some reason. But yeah, and I think this is intentionally, because to experience many different kinds of experiences is really powerful. It's really valuable, and I think this is a part of the agenda behind this oneness. That okay, let me tell a story about that, because now we're touching it.
Okay, can we, just before you do that, I just want to say briefly that the salvation, it can maybe be like everybody is seeking happiness, right? Everybody want to be freed from their suffering, and that's the salvation. Just to
right.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Should I leave a comment on the spiritual ego now or after the story?
Um, I'll just tell the story very shortly.
Good. All right.
All right. So this is like the simplistic creation myth. So imagine like there was everything at the same time. There was only like light. And this one point of consciousness, awareness, knew everything and sees everything, and there's nothing hidden from this. And with that, there is nothing at all, because it's not something that can develop. It doesn't have that gap of there's something that needs to be enlightened. There's simply just that, only that. And that can become quite boring when you're having like an experiential experience, at least like a conscious one. So what's seemingly so Thesaurus did is it split itself in two, like the dark and the light, because it can watch everything. And when dark and light exists, it can experience between those two. So it can look from the dark, look at the light and see, oh my God, this is beautiful. It can look from the light and look at the dark and say different things. So it has all of a sudden like an experiential process. And from this is what we call yin and yang, or masculine and feminine, or light and dark, or the polarities, the law of polarity, essentially. And from that, there's many different kinds of offsprings. That is humans, for example, and different life forms to experience different kinds of beings. But it's all this one source that experiences all of this. But it just makes more sense, I think, that there is this one source that experiences every one of us, and to kind of have only one way to salvation, one way to do things is boring. I mean, it doesn't bring transformation, change, or excitement at all. It's just repetitive nothingness,
So
essentially.
Yeah. So thinking of creation and how to make creation the most amazing, like creativity in life, is kind of like to think of openness, like how to have the most space for all of us and for all the ideas that may appear. There needs to be this openness for creation, openness for creativity and exploration in so many ways. So limiting that is like, yeah, limiting creativity, limiting creation at, and it's like it makes sense that it should not be limited, because it's like creativity in its nature and creation. It's like we can never say, oh, now everything has been created. Now all possible ideas have been explored and thought of. It's like we kind of know we cannot say that. We kind of know that you never know. You never know what's gonna come next. You just can't predict it. You cannot limit it. So I think that's tied very well together. That I think it's kind of nice that creation is creativity. These words are linked. I think that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, we can also talk about like the illusion of knowledge, for example. If everything is this oneness, that means that in every little particle everywhere, there is this infinite knowledge of everything. And to have that kind of in the background means to also have something that filters that information out. So we have the illusion that that we don't know these things. It seems like we cannot know, but we do know. It's just that it's better that we do not remember because the only thing we should really focus at is where you are in this very moment, the experience you're having, experience that. I mean, the other experiences already being experienced. I would like to go back to the topic of spiritual ego. Because there is this one story. I was once hospitalized in a closed ward in Denmark. I chose to because I had a very traumatic experience that essentially wanted me. I couldn't sleep for days, and I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just go there and sleep it out, you know. And I went there, and I realized when I talked to the doctors and the nurses and all that, they really couldn't help at all. Like, didn't understand what I was going through and what it was, that experience that I had. And then I began to talk to the other hospitalized individuals in there. That gave me a lot. But there was this specific one guy where I realized, like, spiritual ego for the first time. And like, okay, right. It was this guy that I just talked to very shortly. He told me that he could control the weather with his mind. And now he cannot do that anymore. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's interesting. And I gave some thought to it, you know. And this guy, what I think happened there, this makes sense with, I can't remember the book's name, but there's like a famous American psychiatrist that had written a book about what schizophrenia is, which is essentially when a spiritual ego takes over, to put in short terms. Can't remember. I think it's called the nature of the human mind, or something like that. Anyways, I realized that this guy, instead of seeing that he was part of a oneness, and this oneness controls the weather and make sure that all of these natural phenomena they occur. Instead of seeing that and tuning into that, he mistook it as himself doing it, like his own little constricted self, his ego, that was doing all these things. And that's a very good example of what a spiritual ego is. Because essentially you take on the natural forces and phenomena and think that you're like the creator of all of those. In a sense you are, but it's not your ego. It's the very essence of who you are. That's that.
It seems like it could easily feel like quite the burden. Of course, quite the power to have that idea, but also quite the burden to have the idea that it's not a shared thing. Interesting.
Right, yeah.
I feel like adding a little story too. I was thinking of when the Corona pandemic was hitting hard, and there was isolation and different regulations in play. And I heard people have opinions, you know, like people have different beliefs on what this and that means and who they trust. And that's fine. It's fine. I can accept there are different opinions. That's okay. But then at some point I was standing with some people and they met each other. And because they shared the exact same belief, they were like, yeah, finally someone who understands the truth. Finally someone who's just as spiritual. And I was standing there feeling that they were agreeing they were more spiritual, and they were like looking at me and feeling sorry for me and like pitying on me a bit. And I was like, whoa, that's very, very interesting. And it's even if I said that, yeah, there might be more than one version to how truth looks like, right? They was just like they were certain that I just, don't worry, Patrick, you'll get there. And I was like, whoa, this is funny. But I was not a fan, you know. I was not a fan because there's so many there was so many things going on. People were very much in their emotions these days. Those days I remember. Not that they are not in everyday life, but that was an example that as if there was one specific truth, but there was a lot of fear on any side. Like fear made people go in one camp or direction. Fear made people go in the other. or faith. Faith made people go in one direction or the other. The difference is that people went somewhere in faith, they didn't judge others and say, oh, for them. But if they went somewhere in fear, they would judge others and say, ah, you just don't know. You just don't see. So this was very interesting. So fear or faith, I see that the spiritual ego operates through fear. I saw that under Corona when it hit the hardest. Judgment and fear went hand in hand with the ego. Let's take the next question here. What is the infamous difference between spirituality and religion? Is there any one at all? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is what I referred to before, that religious is when you become religious about something, you become overly obsessive about something. It could be like the last example we had in the last podcast about Kobe Bryant, for example. Being overly, he was very religious about his training and his success in matter of training. And yeah, that's a good example of how something becomes religious. Religion is like, the way I see it usually, is like a set of rules. So you have like the Abrahamic religions, for example, which is like Islam, it's Christianity, it's Catholicism, Judaism, and these kind of offsprings, different kinds of ways to interpret the same kind of message. But all of these different books have different rules. They have different ways of approaching and different understandings of different things. What they have in common is that there's one way which is described to salvation in most of them. And for example, as a Muslim, if you're eating a pig, you're dirty because pigs are a dirty creature, for example, is an example of that. So if you're like a Muslim, you would probably not eat pork. I mean, some do, but you're probably not if you're really like religious about following your religion. And spirituality is a little bit more fluid. Like there's many different kinds of interpretations of what it actually is, and you can kind of adapt your own way of living inside of that. It's not something that you must follow. Actually, it's just something that is there presently. So in that sense, the difference is that one of them is indoctrination to some extent, and the other one is more like a free way to understand the same topics that the religions talk about in their books, for example, but in a more personal manner, a more personal way that is adapted to your specific experience.
I feel like adding something here, and this the keyword that you said that resonated strongly with me is this thing that religion seems to need a group with a frame and a sort of definition to exist, but spirituality doesn't seem to need that. Its spirituality seems linked to me, while me and everything. So it's not me, just me. It's me in the context of everything, in the context of life, and so in that sense, spirituality seems expanding, and religion a bit confining. I would like to add still that you can be in a religion and be very spiritual, because I also met people who take these old scriptures, and what they get from it, maybe they had a really, really good, let's say, preacher, imam, priest, whatever you call these leaders, And sometimes they also go under the name of spiritual leader. Like in religions, you have leaders, and sometimes if people had good leaders or good upbringings, I don't know, you will feel this openness, you will feel this embracement of the connection with the bigger. So I met people who saw themselves as an integrated part of a religion, but I didn't really feel that religion so much. I felt the spirituality. I felt their connection and their faith, their strong faith and trust, and in the fact that they are not alone here. They are part of something bigger, and that gave them some salvation, that gave them some peace and content, like happiness and courage and what it can do. So so it happens in the frame of religion, but you can also have the example where you just follow all the rules of a religion, and you can feel everything is strict. You can feel that everything is just these rules, and you talk to people about these rules, and if that's the key topic, then maybe there's something missed, something bigger might be going in the background, and I believe it should not, because you can have miserable people in religions and outside of religions. So apparently, religion is not the thing that makes a difference. It's how we are developing as a person in the environment we're in, or in the communities that we are in. So yeah, spirituality, this individual thing connected to everyone and everything. It's not an ego trip. It's an acknowledgement of, hey, I'm little me, but I'm also great me. I'm little me in the world of a lot of little me's, but we are all part of this great me. So yeah.
It's a really good point. I've experienced exactly the same with people, that some people with religions are actually also very they're very receptive, open and receptive to different kinds of views, and can see that, for example, that other religions actually speak of the same message essentially when it goes to the essence. So it's a really good point that you're making there, I think. Because it speaks to that, it's not necessarily religion, but it's how we approach it. Like a knife religion is like a tool. A knife can both cut your slice of bread, or it can kill someone. It's up to you how to approach that, and to utilize the tools that you have for the best of your experience and others, for that sake.
Mm-hmm.
So you can also see that, for example, like one way that religion was used as a tool for manipulation and power was when Paulus rewrote the Bible and chose which chapters and books to stay in the Bible and which ones to exclude, to kind of alter the message that was supposed to go out, so they could kind of have some political control, which means economic control, which means domination, essentially.
It's like it's an example, and I'm aware that this is such an old example that maybe I don't know about the documentation behind it. Maybe people could disagree, but we can say think about, you can, yeah, the example you just gave, it can be believed by some and not by others, but you just have to mention enough examples throughout history. Maybe if they're not linked to specifically the Bible, it can just be, I mean, anyone. You can Google power manipulation through a religious practice, and you will find these different groups and cults, and sometimes it was a subcategory of a big famous religion, and they just kind of like went extreme, and you can find it anywhere. So many places around the world they have been using people's belief in a set of rules and in a religion, and some people abused it. So there is this use being done over the years. And of course, we can say that, oh, we can understand it if we see an example now in during the last 100 years. But there's a likelihood that it has happened as long as humans existed, or the risk of this manipulation has happened since human existence.
Yeah, like the latest example I've heard of one of those things is Sadhguru. I don't know if you know about him. He, there's a lot of controversy around him as a character, as a teacher also, and as a businessman essentially. Apparently, like the place where he has like his Isha Foundation grounds was a forest, and they didn't quite get the permission to chop down the forest that was there already. And they have kind of kept this on the low, because he's he's apparently very good friends with the president as well. And there's been an interview where this was confronted to him, where he began to like shush on the interviewer and asked him to close down his camera in the end, because he had no way to go about that. And I thought that was interesting, you know, also because there was made like a documentary about that, and it was pulled down from YouTube in India, especially, which I thought was very interesting, very interesting. Not that I'm knowing this for sure to be true. I just think it's interesting, and it puts things in perspective, because it is a big business that he runs, and he may do some things that is good for the earth in some sense, but I'm a little bit more skeptic about what he says now that I've seen that, okay, well, there's probably a dark side to this that I wasn't aware of before now, because this is a guy with billions of followers, you know, like it's incredible.
Yeah, quite a famous guy on the internet talking about things. I for sure encountered his names and saw a few videos. I know I have. When you said that name, I could hear that. Sadhguru. It reminds me that, you know, we can be impressed by people, and we can especially be impressed by people if they no longer live to make mistakes that can be documented. But everybody that impresses us, there is a likelihood that they are human, that they were humans, that they are basically like one of us, sitting here, like speaking or watching, whatever, one of us on planet Earth now, having ideas and making our way in the world, believing this and that, cultivating a perception, still being a perception, still being our personal understanding, developing over time. Yes, we learn more. Yes, we feel more knowledgeable, maybe wiser. Maybe people even say, oh, you're wise, you know a lot, I admire you. But the thing is, we all have these different sides. We are not exposing all of us constantly. We're exposing some part of us in every single moment. And we're so much more than what we can express right now. We can, so yes, there can be a famous guy like Sadhguru, and he can teach people wonderful things that help people in life, but it does not make him a saint. It does not make him above other people. It does not make him not flawed in any area, or like in every area in his life. Of course, I think we should remember that this humility, or like, we should be humble enough on our own behalf and other people's behalf to see that, hey, nobody is without, you know, any faults or some things that they can improve on. It's so important to remember this, and it can also help us on our own journey, because then we don't have to feel that some people are at a peak where we can never reach it. If we look at people and think, oh, they are so amazing, I can never be like that, it's like, no, you're not seeing the full picture here. Yes, they seem so peaceful because they are showing that side. They're showing that part, and yes, maybe they cultivated it, but did they cultivate some other side? Often people made huge sacrifices to become good at in some direction. So maybe you became good at business and talking about spirituality, but did you become good at building a community with children? Like, are you a good family father or mother, for example? Are you a good whatever? There's so many areas in life that we can be good at, and we don't have to think that people are just better in certain areas. Yes, and then let's learn maybe in these areas, but let's not be naive and think that people master everything better than we do, and that what people managed in life is not obtainable for us. Well, some peak is obtainable for us. Some amazing life is obtainable for us, but it's not going to be a copy of someone else's life. If we try to think like that, we'll be disappointed. We're not going to be like someone else. So they are just a human, and yes, they excel in some direction, but they will have weak spots because they cannot cultivate all areas of life. And we will have our own strengths and weak spots. So I think I'm happy you mentioned this example, because sometimes we can forget. When people get very popular, we might forget that they're still human, and they still are just as human as we are. They just excel in some areas. We might excel in others. Or we are different construct, a different mix of skills and features.
Yeah, we also see that in like pop culture today. I was just watching the show called Dave, which is Dave Bird, which is the rapper Lil Dicky, that made a series about. I don't think it's like a realistic view of his career, but like a dramatized version of that. And there's this. He's sitting at like a bar mitzvah with kids and explaining them how they do not wish to be like him. And they're like, yes, we do. Of course we do. He's like, no, you do not want to be like me. And this is a funny thing about when you become very vividly successful, you actually realize that the past, was kind of more free for you, because what you thought was freedom for you, which is all that success and all that splendor in your life, professional or career-wise success, or financial gain, or anything like that. They kind of remember a time when they actually had to fight for all these things, and that was the fun time. That was really when you could really show up with something. And I think every artist and every successful person would wish that they were still there, that they could just continue being in that state, just something to add to that as well, because it's interesting. We usually look at these idols like they're idols, but in reality, it's just there are other human beings going through a similar transformation. It's not that different. It's if you look down on the very essence, like the very general steps of what you have to do to get to a certain point of success, it's the same things you have to do. It's just they have different expressions. Someone makes podcasts like twice or one time a week. Some play guitar every single day. Some others sing 3 times a week at the choir or something like that, But essentially, it's the same. It's the same thing you do. You are continuously doing these perpetual tasks to get there and to really specialize yourself in a certain area. And it's important to remember, I think, especially when we talk about this, because people like that is people who have just put effort into making it so. And they have so far had maybe more time, or maybe they put more effort into making it so. Doesn't mean they're any more happy or unhappy than you. It's just what it is, you know.
Yeah. I'm gonna write down that as a topic, like happy versus unhappy, because I think some people like to try and make others feel unhappy to suit their agenda. So I'm just gonna I wrote it down. Okay.
Okay, right.
So yeah, because I like the example you gave of different things people can do during the week, and then you said, yeah, to reach somewhere or like to specialize. And then I was thinking, I imagine that some people actually might do it not even to specialize, but just because they realize, hey, I like that. I just do these things and I like that. And they don't even have the idea that they are specializing. Of course they are. They are getting better at these things, right? But that's not the reason they do it. And probably they are enjoying quite a lot because they are maybe in the moment. That's very interesting. So I know that it can be important to sort of, or it can be very motivating to have a goal, have a place to go to, but everybody I heard talk about these journeys toward a goal, they always say, oh, it's about the journey. Enjoy the journey, be in the now. So basically, the most important is that we are doing things in life that make sense to us, that feel good in the now. And then it will take you somewhere. And if it feels, if the more nows that feel good, the better the place you're going, probably, because it's going to be an accumulated experience of these good nows. I mean, it's gonna build. It's gonna fill us up. It's very, very interesting. There are different ways to go, but I was just reminded of that, as you said. And you gave these examples of how people that seem at the peak in life, it's, they're not necessarily thinking, oh, now I reached the best place. No.
No, there's this animated movie called Soul. I don't know if you've seen it before.
I think
It's
maybe, is it Disney Pixar
it,
or something?
yeah, I think it's Pixar, yeah. And and this guy is a guy that really wants to be like a famous musician. I think he's a jazz musician,
Mm.
and he had like a vision of his name in like a billboard and experiencing like a brand level of success. And he reaches this point, and then there's a scene about him being kind of like a little bit depressed, sad, whatever, and like a woman appears before him. I can't remember what kind of relation they had, but they have some kind of relations together. Um, and 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 she asked what's wrong, and he was like, "You know what? I thought it would feel different being here." And she said that she told him a story about a fish and an older fish, and this there was like this one fish that told this older fish that I want to go to the ocean. And the old fish looks at the young fish and like, the ocean? Where you at now? And then she just walks away. So, and the point is that you're always there. You're always in that moment where you see that success happening. It doesn't seem, the physical just doesn't seem like it's there, but it's there because you're living that experience right here, right now, which is important to remember. And also, it's not that one moment, because once you have reached that one moment that you dream of, have a vision of, there's going to be something else afterwards. I mean, it's not like it's just stopping there and, okay, well, I've seen this, now I'm going to die. I'll just lay down and die, No, it's not like that. It continues, when you have reached one goal and one dream, you would want to do something else. You would want to accomplish some other desires within you.
That makes sense. Maybe some some people
Or you can
listening.
also make a you could also make a Jim Carrey and totally abandon any desire at all. I think that's also an option.
So in his life, he's talking about leaving all desires.
Yeah, he's like he retreated some years back, and he just began to paint and you know, progress in his spiritual self, and just do that, cultivate that. I mean, I think it's admirable after that kind of level of success. He even says that he would wish everyone in the world would have like be famous and be rich, just to realize that that's not it.
Yeah. Just to leave the feeling of missing out behind. People don't have to worry about that, right? Because many might imagine that that is the place to be. But also, of course, not everyone. But
no, I mean, it might be for some. It's just that it's not the goal.
Yeah.
I think that's the important the important point about that it's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is that you get to have that experience, and that your life is meant to be like the most beautiful you could ever imagine, if you allow it to be so, of course.
Yeah, and whatever beautiful you can imagine is what you deserve, and you can take steps. But enjoy the ride. Maybe paint.
Yeah, maybe paint. Make a Jim Carrey.
Yeah, nice. You have some final words before I wrap it up?
I would just say that we are making a second episode because this is such a vast topic, and we already talked like from a few questions we touched a lot of points. So we kind of wanna go on with another episode of A Matter of Trust with spirituality as the topic. So yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to say.
That's cool. It's gonna be nice. I want to say thank you very much to you, Yeshua, and to all of you watching. It's been yet another pleasure, and I look forward to next time. If you do like what you hear and see, please don't hesitate to like, comment, or subscribe. It can help us, and we appreciate everything. Just you being here. Thank you. And see you. This is A Matter of Trust.
Peace out.